With President Biden off the campaign trail, he's relying on his vice president to counter the Republican National Convention. Kamala Harris spoke this morning criticizing the Republican National Committee's messaging, and her newly nominated opponent, Senator J.D. Vance, who gave his first major speech Wednesday night after being announced as Trump's running mate.
Joe Biden has been a politician in Washington for longer than I've been alive, 39 years old. Kamala Harris is not much further behind. For half a century, he's been the champion of every major policy initiative to make America weaker and poorer.
You cannot claim you stand for unity if you are pushing an agenda that deprives whole groups of Americans of basic freedoms, opportunity, and dignity.
CBS News Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett joins me now from Milwaukee. Major, it's good to see you. What did J.D. Vance's speech tell you or us last night about the future trajectory of the Trump campaign, either geographically or substantively?
Great to be with you, John. I hope the audience at home will enjoy the musical playings of Six Wire, the RNC band here doing a lot of dad rock, classic rock, old guy radio, whatever you call it. I will compete happily with Six Wire. So I think one of the takeaways from last night's speech from J.D. Vance, and this is slightly glib, but I think it's within the bounds. Millennials for mercantilism, okay? What is mercantilism? It was an economic philosophy started in the 16th century, went all the way to the 19th century, early 20th century America that is basically an idea of economic nationalism, built on supporting native industries and repelling or at least raising the prices of any kind of import that comes from another country with very high tariffs. Now, the Trump campaign says they want reciprocal trade. Well, reciprocal trade means meeting in some agreement about whatever the level of tariffs are. That's not what is on the agenda for a second Trump term, should there be one. Former President Trump has said tariffs across the board on all trading partners, up to 10%, maybe even getting rid of or dramatically reducing income taxes and replacing that revenue almost entirely with tariffs. That's mercantilism. And essentially that's what J.D. Vance was talking about last night. Deeply critical of existing trade deals, all trade deals basically carried out before former President Trump became president of the United States. That is now part of, I think it's fair to say, with J.D. Vance giving that speech last night and becoming the chosen running mate for former President Trump, a new part of the governing Republican economic philosophy. It is a dramatic change from free market, Milton Friedman, Francis Hayek, and other free market people that wrote and talked about the fundamentals of global economics and that Republicans embraced for the better part of the last 4 decades.
And just quickly to follow up on that, Major, and the usual criticism of mercantilism is that it ends up raising domestic prices because you're not benefiting from the free market's ability to go all over the world and get the cheapest goods or cheapest parts of a good to make it for cheap in the United States.
Right, and the Trump campaign would say, yeah, but that created a race to the bottom, and that very dramatically affected the economic fortunes of the middle part of America, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and the like, because those industries could not compete. They need, if not walls built around them economically, some kind of tariff protection. Maybe that's true, maybe it isn't. The fact that it was a centerpiece of this millennial addition to the Trump campaign ticket, I think, is worth noting.
Fascinating. Yeah, absolutely. So conventions, and you've already answered this question, but I'll ask it for anything else. Conventions are essentially like Cinderella. There's a big party, but at midnight, the clock strikes and everything turns back into a pumpkin. The race goes back to wherever it was. Some things linger on sometimes. What, in this case, even though this convention takes place in a unique moment, what do you think lingers on beyond all of the theatrics, which are good for the party, but probably won't affect the election?
So conventions try to create moments. This convention, John, did not have to create a moment where imagery and emotion combined. That happened Saturday in Butler, Pennsylvania, and it happened most visibly here on Monday when former President Trump, keeping the Republican National Convention fully on schedule, arrived here, white patch over his right ear, and the thunderous, deeply emotional reaction to that. And what you're going to hear later tonight in the prelude to former President Trump's speech is rock and roll screaming to the rafters here. Fight, 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 with fists raised in the air. Merging that emotion and that imagery of former President Trump getting back on his feet. That will be, I believe, the iconic message that comes out of this convention, merging with what was already an iconic photograph.
And quickly, since you got sources everywhere, what are you hearing about the Biden situation?
It's distressed, it is isolated, and it is facing a very uncertain future. That future, I'm told by many Democrats, likely to be resolved one way or the other by Monday, no later than Tuesday of next week.
Major Garrett from Milwaukee, and people wonder why we all wear those headsets. It's because of 6 Wire and the other madness going on behind you. Thanks for being there for us, Major. We appreciate it.